Mountain robust to join onward by Master Atlan, Chapter 71. Facing evil and never wavering, he looked around in the dark. The moon was close to falling into the horizon, but it was still high enough that almost everyone in the settlement was still resting. Even all the workers had finally finished their work for the night and rested, meaning they could go to sleep as well, and they did, crashing in an instant and making no promise of waking up before the sun rose again. Except for Naruto, who was still uneasy and unable to sleep. It wasn't the Graham that threatened to attack the settlement when they were sleeping, because the surrounding packs and monsters had been quickly dealt with, and it wasn't the wall because it had been repaired faster than anticipated with their help, and wouldn't fold under any surprise at the Grim attacks. It was Ruby's call that plagued his mind, or the lack of any contact during and after it that reached him. The background noise and static had stuck with him for hours. Afterwards, he had tried to contact her again, but wherever she was had truly terrible signal. He tried calling Blake, Yang, and Weiss as well, but had much of the same luck reaching them as he did their leader. Now he knew that fretting over a crappy call and getting all worked up about it was silly and could be considered a paranoia. But then he remembered that team RWBY had gone to the southeast to find anything they could about Roman Tolchewick's operations and his work with the White Fang in Mount Glen, the location of the single greatest tragedy in Bill history. And now he couldn't reach them, and the one call he had gotten had cut away randomly. It might have just been paranoia, but it left his stomach twisted in a knot. The Whisker team took a deep breath and looked down at the beacon in his hand. Beacon in his hand. It was small, but would act as a transmitter that would call a bullhead over to pick them up at any time it was needed. He looked down at it and seriously considered his options. He could just head over there by himself and check up on them, hop over the wall and not disturb anybody, so he could make sure they were all right. It would be just him, not involving or disturbing anyone else, and just putting his mind at ease. The problem with that was the fact that he'd have to traverse the wilderness to reach what was basically a mass grave. Southeast was a very big direction with a ton of crap in it he wasn't going to find in just one night. The other choice was to call in a bullhead and easily traverse the area from a much better vantage point. The downside would be that that would attract attention. He would have to explain his flimsy excuse for wanting to leave, potentially ruining the mission and leaving a black stain on their team's history forever. Plus, the idea of abandoning the job before it was complete left a pit in his belly. The final possibility was that he just accepted that it was an accident. The service was terrible, and Ruby was just calling him to chat about how safe and okay and wonderful everything was. Man, trusting the others to be safe and putting his anxiety to rest sounded like the best idea imaginable. Sadly, it wasn't called anxiety because he could just ignore it, and if there was even a chance that his friends were facing the White Fang at this moment. Liam, for your thoughts? Naruto nearly jumped out of his skin when he heard the voice behind him. He was so focused on what to do, he didn't even realize his teammates had snuck up on him. He tried to slow down his heart and loudly whisper, "Why the hell are you guys awake?" We could ask you the exact same question, Kiba said as he, Tenten, and Sasuke eyed the leader spectacly. That the two, the fighter pointed down at the beacon in Naruto's hands, trying to hide it away, but too late as they already started. You leave something back at beacon? No, it's nothing. Naruto tossed the beacon back at them and nervously shook his head. It was stupid anyway. Just me being worried about nothing. He realized his backtrack wasn't doing anything to convince his friends that it was just a mistake. The young leader lowered his head in guilt and nodded. I was worried about Ruby and the others. Did something happen? I just got a call from her earlier out of nowhere. It was just static and jumbled nonsense, he admitted. They looked at him oddly and he awkwardly shrugged. That's why I said it was nothing. It was just me freaking out about a call. It's stupid. But you were still willing to leave, try and find them and make sure they were okay because you're worried it might actually be something of concern. He nodded. It was a silly concern, but one based on something else. And you thought about going there alone? His ears flicked on his head, and he looked up, finally noticing they were fully dressed and carrying their weapons with them. He shook his head. No, we can't all go on just the gut feeling I have. We'll fail our assignment. I'm pretty sure if one of us leaves, then the assignment fails. Not to mention you're our leader, so it will definitely look bad either way. Tintin stated. But you can't seriously expect us to let you go into a fight all by yourself, do you? There might not even be a fight. It's just a gut feeling. But what if there is? And there was the crux of the matter. He'd feel so much more certain and prepared for the punishment and consequences of leaving to fight another battle if he was sure there was another battle to fight. At the moment, all he had was his gut, and he didn't feel comfortable risking everything on just that. What if it was just a mistake? He'd have risked all of these people's lives, abandoning their mission, and cost them their legitimacy at Beacon because he pulled a boy who cried a Beowulf act. It was enough to leave him with an ulcer. It looks like you kids have already made your decision. The Beacon team looked over and found themselves joined by Kakashi and Tasuna. The wolf huntsman looked unbothered by the disturbance so late at night. While the older builder looked like he had already been up. The silver-haired man stepped forward and looked between them. Do you really think your friend is in trouble? Naruto looked at all the people waiting for him to make his decision before exhaling. He gave him the best answer he could. He shrugged. I have no idea. Like I said, it's just a hunch. But you know you're supposed to stay here until the mission's over, don't you? Yeah, I know that. You can call it quits if you want. They were surprised to hear the old villager speak up. Tasuna cleaned his glasses before slipping them back over his eyes. The barrier is almost completed much faster than scheduled. Your guardian and assistance in making it really helped. It can already withstand a grim attack, and all that's left to do is the finishing touches to make sure it lasts. By all means, your job is already done. We appreciated the thought, Mr. Tasuna, but it isn't so simple. Kakashi said. They came here to do a job, protect the town until the repairs to its defenses are complete. Even if it can stand, it isn't finished. Therefore, their duty as huntsman and huntresses is still valid. To leave now would be abandoning their job. Team Nautics looked concerned by that warning before Tenten asked them. What happens if we do leave? Your punishment for abandoning your assignment will have to be determined by your teachers. But I imagine that it will be severe. Abandoning your first assignment may even force you to retake the year if they find the punishment is suiting. It's the same kind of reaction you would get if you become a real huntsman and leave a mission before it's completed. Their eyes widened and they heard some gulps before Kakashi followed. But if there is reasonable cause for leaving your mission, a terrible disaster in need of relief, or a greater threat at work, and then it is understandable. So, it all depends on whether you all think that this might be one of those cases. Naruto looked between his friends with an uncertain and complicated expression. His ears twisted on his head before he looked at the huntsman. What do we do? That's up to you. But in situations like this, I remember something a friend and I said to each other. Kakashi looked up in thought and spoke with a serious tone. Those who abandon their jobs are scum, but those that abandon their friends are even worse than scum. So either we're scum. Kakashi blinked and shrugged. Basically. The teenager just looked unimpressed. That's really shitty advice, and it doesn't do anything to help me make the decision. Are you sure? Since you were already preparing to leave and trying to talk to your teammates out of sharing the punishment, it seems like you already made your decision. Ned opened his mouth but closed it when he cutted the device thrown to him. The beacon lay in his palm with his friends showing their support, ready and willing to follow him into the unknown. He took a deep breath and pressed the button. Ruby, you better be in serious trouble. Hunting, and she was in serious trouble. Ruby tried not to show her fright, but being surrounded on all sides by dozens or hundreds of terrorists, unarmed, she might add, was making it very difficult. Her eyes darting around as she found herself in a dark, deep cavern with rundown buildings, machinery, and weapons that she'd normally fall over, plus enough dust around. Plus enough dust that she was probably never needed to buy another round of ammunition for as long as she lived. And amidst all of these things were countless White Fang members toiling away at work or sparing her a glance when they had the chance. It left a twist in her belly. Man, never thought I'd see the day. It twisted more when she heard the man laughing at her expense. Ruby turned over, looking up from her spot on the ground and glaring at the despicable man that stood over her. Told she we couldn't hide the shit-eating grin that split his face at having the biggest pain in his ass in recent memory at his mercy. The crook tried to stay composed but failed to stop his smug joy from showing as he played with her scroll. Seriously, I can't believe I found you here, Red. So close to opening day. I thought there was bound to be an annoying gnat or bug that would try and ruin the fun. I should have guessed it was you that would come to ruin on the parade. But getting caught without your weapon and by these guys of all people, not sure whether I should laugh or shake my head in disappointment. I really expected better of you, Red. What did you expect? This Ruby darted off the ground before being tripped and planted into the dirt. She growled and coughed into the dirt, feeling her eyes sting from the sand that got in them. Before she looked down, the hook of the criminal mastermind's cane was tied around her foot to stop her from escaping. Yes, I didn't expect that. Tostrick pressed the button and laughed as she was drawn back in. One end of his cane clicked back into place, and the orange-haired man smirked down at the scowling young huntress. So you're pretty wily and a definite pain in my butt, but I know you didn't come here alone or just by coincidence. He knelt down to meet her eyes. So tell me, Red, how did you know we were going to be here? Because you held a big rallying bell with tons of potential members announcing where you would be positioned. Ruby answered, taking a little pride in watching the smug look on Roman's face fall into a horrible realization. I mean, we didn't think you'd be here at Mount Galena, but we still knew you were in the southeast. Do you remember us being there listening to you? Roman gulped and stood up. Ugh, let's move past that point. Hey, how about I ask a question? Ruby barked as she stood back up and glared at the criminal. What are you doing? Why are you doing this? I mean, I hate why all the foreigners are doing it, but I at least understand why they are. But you, what do you get out of it? Just another job for you? Is there even a profit? Oh, good point. I should definitely see if I can get away with some reward at the end of this. Her eyes widened and Roman clicked his tongue. All you need to know, Red, is that my reasons are mine alone, and that's the end of that. Next point. He twirled his cane around and aimed the end of it in her face. As the reticle popped up. Where are your friends? Because if I've learned anything from all your noising around, it's that you come in a pack, and that's when things get unbearable. How do you know I didn't come here by myself? So the team I sent out already aren't going to find anyone when they search the ruins. Ruby stilled, and it was enough to get Roman smiling. You need to work on your poker face, kid. You gotta tell I could spot a mile away. So I guess your mere band of little cretins aren't far behind, huh? She gripped her fist and looked ready to attack before Roman leveled his weapon again. Don't do anything you might regret. And to make it perfectly clear, only you'd regret it. I think I might just have dreams of rainbows and lollipops knowing you're finally out of my hair. Do you usually dream of rainbows and lollipops? Oh please keep talking. Give me a reason. What is this? A low, rough voice joined her conversation as Ruby felt the ground under her stress. A massive shadow lingered over her as the hooded girl froze in fright. She rolled over her head back in order to look up at the huge man. Han's eyes narrowed into a glare between her and the crook that tormented her. How did the little huntress from Beacon get here? A few of our guys caught her snooping around the ruins. I was just showing our little guest around and asking her if she came here alone. Why are you wasting time? Han asked, stumping forward and towering over the crouched Reaper. Ruby felt her throat go dry when she saw his face become coated in his milky aura. If she's intruded and you already have been looking for her cohorts, then you don't need her. If you just get rid of her. Hold up, Han, baby. Roman's weapon pointed to the furnace before he could follow through with his threat. The orange-haired criminal shook his head. You don't get to take this away from me away from me after I've been waiting so goddamn long. Plus, since we're the only ones left here, I have seniority over you. Are you pulling rank? Roman smirked as Han narrowed his eyes. He dispelled his aura and shook his head. If you keep toying with her, you risk jeopardizing our efforts. Don't worry. Roman turned back around and sneered down at the teen. she's not going anywhere, and our guys are bound to find her little friends safe and sound and napping, and take them out while they sleep. We'll have everything settled, and there's nothing left for them to. A massive explosion happened at the other end of the cavern. Run! We're under attack! Huntsman! Ruby! A familiar voice roared as a blonde ran through the underground city, destroying anything in her path. Where's my sister? Oh, you've got to be... Yang! Ruby sprinted off the ground and disappeared in a red blur with her speed, but not before kicking her leg out and landing a cheap strike in Roman's crotch. While he was distracted, she snapped her scroll from his hand and ran to her sister and team. I'm here! Son of a bitch! Roman hissed and nestled his injury. He looked back and saw Han standing behind him, silent and stoic, but with a slight tilt in his eye. Torchwick growled, "Don't say a goddamn word! Everyone, get on the train! We're getting the plan in motion!" Han tried to grab the criminal, but Roman slipped away before he could reach it. The horse vanished snarled, It's not time to enact the plan yet. We're going ahead of schedule. Are you willing to disobey the orders? Well, the alternative is risking the whole operation with a huntsman and those wannabe brats capable of wrecking our work. Yeah, I'm changing the timetable. Sue me. Now get on the bloody train so we can head out. What is all this? White's shocked to see so much dust and machinery hitting in the ruins of the Grand City. Is this where Torchwick and the White Fang have been keeping everything? Blake shook her head. I knew they were in the southeast, but I never would have imagined they hid everything in Mount Glen, hiding it all in a tragedy. Why did you run off? Why didn't you wait for us? So I had to tell us where you were. Are you okay? Did they hurt you? Yang's rapid questioning continued until she just hugged her sister tighter into her chest. Don't ever do that again. I won't, and I'm sorry. Ruby hugged back. They're finally being released and bending down to Pet Swy, who rallied them all together and warned them what happened. The silver-eyed girl felt immense relief when she saw her teammates and was handed Crescent Rose. However, her relief was short-lived when she heard the loud whistling of a train horn. Oh no, Ruby, what is going on down here? Ruby turned to Ublik. Doc, whatever. She waved her arms in a panic. They loaded up all the weapons and dust on that train, and the train is already moving out. Ublik's eyes narrowed behind his spectacles, focusing on the retreating caboose of the vehicle. He fixed his glasses up his nose before looking between the girls. Well, ladies, I think we have a duty to join these folks on the little trip. Who's with me? Woof! That's what I'd like to hear. Ublik cheered with Swy as he and the corgi charged forward to follow the train. The huntresses made to follow after them, but slowed when they saw Ruby lag behind. They spotted their young leader working on her scroll. Ruby, this is not the time to text them. I'm trying to call Beacon. I thought maybe John could warn them if we don't make it in time. I tried calling Naruto earlier, but she huffed in anger before pocketing her device and running to join her team. Okay, guys, I think we're on our own from this point on. Hunting, can we make this thing go any faster? Okay, I can't make the bullhead move any faster than it's already going. That's not me being difficult either. It's physics. Stop panicking in my ear and sit down. Naruto grumbled and stepped back into the hole of the ship. He sat with the others as they kept the vigilant watch out of openings of the hull. Anything catching your eyes? We're still pretty far out of the mountains. There isn't much we can spot from here, but the Grim are acting up. Sasuke mentioned as he watched the hordes and waves of monsters so large that he could see them running through the forest. His eyes enhanced with his semblance made him the only person who wasn't a faunus that could see in the dark, which left him the look at her. He felt the nervous looks on his back before shaking his head. They're heading away from the village, so we don't have to worry about the walls getting bombarded or swarmed. But if they're heading away from the village, that means they're heading for the mountains. Crap! What the hell did they get themselves into? We're not certain of anything yet. Kakashi warned as he narrowed his eyes. Although this grim activity is odd, we don't know for certain if it involves your friends. We know our friends. So we're pretty sure this has something to do with them. You may want to seriously reevaluate how you make friends if this is a regular occurrence. They try to retort, but were silenced by the deafening explosion. The bullhead and its occupants felt a rush of wind following the explosive sound. Thrice whined in shock as they spotted a solid pillar of black smoke and embers rise from the treetops. Hey! Naruto called out to the cockpit. Get us over there, quick! The ship took a hard bank and veered towards the smoke. As they got closer, they heard another explosion rock the ground and air around them, and another column of smoke rose dozens of meters away. But in line with the first one they saw, they hovered over the hole in the ground and gasped. The Grim! They watched in horror as the wave of monsters started to circle around the gaping hole in the ground. Dozens to hundreds of Grim forced themselves in, trampling over or crushing each other to get in. They're doing whatever they can to get in there. Why is there a hole in the ground? Kiba yelled over the panic. What the hell is happening under the surface? I remember hearing stories about an abandoned railway underground. The students looked at Kakashi, the wolf found his near in his eyes. It was supposed to be a transit system for moving supplies and occupants from the city to the settlements being created on Mount Glen. Once it became clear the settlement wasn't going to last under the pressure from the Grim, they tried using the train to get people back to the city, but once it was too late, they sectioned off the railway and kept it closed for years. It's true, the pilot yelled from the cockpit. That's a straight path from Mount Glen to Vale underneath the ground, and there were explosions erupting from underneath the ground to open up holes in the railway to the surface, and it was letting Grim pile in for a one-way ticket to an all-you-can-eat buffet. Naruto looked up and realized that the others had come to the same conclusion as him. We have to warn people. We have to get to Vale. I'm trying. The pilot barked back from the cockpit before cursing. I can't reach them with the radio. All this interference from the explosions is messing up all the communications. I can't reach on the scrolls either. We need to get closer to the city. What about that? Naruto pointed down the holes being created by the explosions and the monsters that were scrambling into them. He understood how important it was to get back to Vale in time to warn people, or at least close enough to call them. But that didn't change the fact that the attack was happening right now directly beneath them. His point was emphasized with another explosion that shook the air. We can't just do nothing about this while it's still happening. Then what should we do? Naruto poked his head out and looked down over the landscape. It was moving so quick that the trees looked like a green sea, but the green wave was so large in number that he could still distinctly see them. They flew high over the forest, but were now heading in the same path as the explosions as they floated over where the line of the holes was being made. Whatever was causing the destruction was underneath the ground right now, blowing up the tunnels. The White Fang were down there. The Grim were down there. RWBY was down there. He could feel it in his stomach. I'm going down there to see what's happening. Maybe I can stop it from getting any worse, but there's no way I'll be able to stop all those Grim from reaching the city. The rest of you have to reach the city and warn them about what's coming. Whoever you can get, however they can help, you need to warn them from this getting any worse. His teammates looked at him in silence before he steeled himself. His eyes hardened as he nodded. Trust me, I'll be okay. I just want to help them. I just want to help them down there as best as I can. By going down there by yourself, Kakashi chimed in. That's suicide. I have a way of avoiding Grim from attacking me. He remembered what Blake had told him about their fight with the White Fang in the Emerald Forest. When he had activated his semblance and was caught in the stampede of Grim, they had avoided him or run around him entirely, and he didn't react in panic or fear or anything when he was surrounded. When he heard from his father that his semblance acted solely on instinct, he realized that made him invincible to the Grim who reacted to emotion and negativity, if only for a small period of time. If he reached the tunnel and found no one there but Grim, he would immediately activate his semblance and hide from them. If that didn't work and he went crazy, well, he was hoping his aura held out long enough for him to clean everything up. He looked back up at his friends who watched him quietly as they waited for his assurance. He nodded. I'll be okay. Please, trust me. Kiba nodded and raised his hand to the middle. Tendon did the same with an anxious smile, and Sasuke rounded them up. Naruto smiled and placed his hand on top before they separated. A silent promise that they'd see each other again. Naruto turned back around and held the edge of the hole to keep himself steady. He drew his nodachi and opened up its air compartment before summoning his aura around his hand. He pulled out one of the dust arrows and gripped it tightly in his glowing hand while watching the orange aura tap on the properties of rock and stone. Oh man, please let me survive this. Hunting. Blake grunted as she spun in the air with weapons unsheathed, her sickle stretched on her ribbon, and spinning around as she parried several blades and bullets with her cleaver. The cat faunus landed in a crouch, yanking her sickle back to her hand in time to change it into a gun and fire. Her shots stunned and knocked several White Fang members off of their feet, either tumbling on top of the terrain car or falling off of it completely. She didn't want to focus on what happened to the ones that fell off. There were so many possibilities or alternatives she wanted to convince herself of when they fell, but the screeching and roars of grain behind them as they followed quickly quelled those delusions. But the White Fang had planned this attack, ready to blow up these holes and allowed the Grim in before leading them to Vale. Blake felt conflicted about throwing them off, but she knew they didn't deserve her sympathies. She heard a loud click under them and felt the car they stood on start to gradually slow down. Jump! She yelled to her team and teacher as they charged for the end of the car. They yelled and leapt over the growing gap, landing on the next car of the train as the one they had stood on steadily slowed down and lagged behind them. Incoming! With Ublik's warning, and they covered their ears and braced themselves. The deafening sound was passed over them first, followed by the instant rush of heat and the tremor that shook everything. Blake felt agony run through her ears, not the ones not the ones at her side, which she covered, but the ones atop her head that only had the cloth of her bow to protect them. Once the explosion had subsided, the Huntress's team and huntsmen looked back at the damage caused to the tunnel once again. The bomb had eradicated some of the Grim that were followed behind them, crushing them with rubble or burning them down in the blast. But where one may have fallen, two more took its place with the new hole and the beast that fell in. And damn it! Yang slammed her fist down on the car in rage. There's more and more of them coming in. Can't we just defuse these bombs from exploding or stop the car from detaching or something? None of us know how to defuse bombs, and keeping them all locked together would cause a chain reaction that would destroy the rest of the train and ignite whatever dust it still has inside. Weiss called back, looking towards Ublik for confirmation as the green-haired man verified with a nod. The Harris lifted herself up, ignoring the ringing in her ears as she focused. The best plan we have is stopping this train from getting any further to blowing a hole through Vale. We understand that, Blake groaned before looking up, but that's easier said than done. The train was moving at a blistering pace. Their hair was whipping over their heads like a wild curtain, and the wind made it difficult to hear without yelling as loud as they could. They were going so fast, and the front of the train was so far away they couldn't even see it. The distance from Anklen to Vale was fast, but this thing going at its current speed meant it wouldn't be for long. Not to mention all the armored White Fang members who were currently standing between them and their goal. But it still needs to be done, Ruby yelled over the deafening wind, getting their attention as the scythe-wielding girl narrowed her eyes and focused solely on the goal ahead. Her silver eyes hardened. We need to get to the front train and stop it. That's all we can do now. Ruby, if you can get to the front, on it. Ruby dashed forward with her goal in mind. Wait, I didn't need to run! Ruby! Ah! The Huntress leapt back in fright when the compartment door she almost leapt over burst off its hinges and ricocheted off of the top of the tunnel. Ruby stumbled back before leaping backwards and rejoining her team. Yang had a hand on her shoulder to make sure she was stable as they looked back up. Their breath hitched as they saw a massive, overwhelming but familiar figure lumbering out of the open frame of the now broken door. The metal of the train creaking under Han's huge weight as he faced them. And it was foolish to think we'd escape before you could catch us, you could reach us. Still, it's odd to see you here joining us on our side, on our ride. The horse faunus looked around, noticing a severe difference in numbers for the White Fang that had come up to greet them before he turned with a snarl. Did you even care what fate you left them to? The girl hesitated before Ublik stepped forward, facing the larger man without any indecision. We told them to stand down and let us through. They took up arms and attacked us, adamant to guard this train and allow it to reach its destination. Considering the severity of this crime, I suggest you don't attempt to guilt us into feeling bad about fighting for our goal. Quite a methodical answer. I'm sure you've had to come up with a response like that once or twice. Han's eyes wandered to the black-clad member of their group before he scoffed. I remember not too long ago you were attempting to reason with your brothers and sisters. Giving up on that path, have you, traitor? I can't condone or allow what you all are doing any longer. Blake's eyes narrowed as she leveled her weapon at the guard. I am a Huntress of Beacon and a member of Team Ruby, and I will stop you here and now. Oh, Han's hands glowed milky white, and the blades along his gauntlets started to whip around. The hunters took their stances as Han slowly stalked forward. Then I guess I'll have no qualms in taking each and every one of you and crushing your hands under my. Suddenly, the roof of the tunnel just a few meters ahead of them exploded and collapsed. Something fell through and slammed into the train car further up. They all stumbled and embraced themselves before looking up at what had arrived. Naruto leapt out of the dust cloud and struck Han with an expanded rock-covered fist. The horse Volnus was sent flying back, forcing Team Ruby and Oobleck to dodge as the White Fang members went storming past them and off the train entirely. They watched the noble guard bounce off the tracks before looking back ahead. Oh my god! Oh my god! Oh my god! Naruto panicked and stumbled on his feet, taking massive gulps of air and failing to hold them in as he screamed, "I didn't die! I can't believe I didn't die! Holy crap! How am I not dead?" Naruto! The blonde Volnus looked up and saw the looks of shock and confusion aimed his way. He was still in a frantic frenzy, coming down from his massive spike of adrenaline as he dove from the sky and through the ground to land on the train. "Hey, you're all here! I knew you would be in the center of this mess. My gut was right. I gotta start trusting it more. Why are you yelling? I can't control the sound of my... Oh, sorry." His heart finally slowed down and he took a deep enough breath to calm himself. He ran up to join his friend with a relieved smile. "I am so glad you're all okay. Wait, what are you guys even doing here?" Weiss asked, throwing the question they were all thinking. "I'm here to help." "No," she means, "what are you doing here? Like, how did you know how to come here right now?" Yang clarified, "Well, the bombs erupting under the ground were a dead giveaway to something not being right." He pulled out his scroll for emphasis. "I came over because the call Ruby gave me left me feeling suspicious, and I guess I was right. You came here, jumped into the ground, landed on the train, and attacked that man based on a call that cut out too soon." "Well," he blushed and shrugged. "I got worried. I thought you could use some help." They stared at him. "I was right? Ruby wasted no time jumping at her friend and hugging him tightly. He was even more surprised when the other girls came up to and caught him in a group hug. He looked over at Oobleck, and although the older teacher wasn't jumping at the chance to an embrace, he did give a grateful nod to the young man. Everyone was grateful for his arrival to help. Even why is the dog here? Naruto jumped away and tried to escape from Weiss, reached as the little corgi barked happily and chased after him like it was a game. Ruby shyly scratched her head. "I kind of brought Swai along with us for the mission. I thought he'd get lonely just sitting there in our room, so you brought him on a dangerous mission like this instead." Naruto tried to shoo the little canine away, but he was too excited to listen. Yang mercifully decided to step in and scoop their dog up in one hand, staring her friend down disappointedly when she did. He coughed and collected himself before looking around. "So, what are we dealing with? The White Fang filled this train with bombs and dust and are going to use it to ram into the end of the tunnel. All of the grim they have following after them will pour when we hit the end, and they'll invade the city." A spark of something filled Naruto's eyes, but Ruby quickly shook her head. I only saw Totsuki and this big guy leading all these people. I think they're the ones we have to stop." His expression shifted subtly, but he quickly stilled himself and nodded in agreement. "Wait, where's the rest of your team in that huntsman? They went on ahead to warn Bell. See if they can't head this problem off before it gets worse. You didn't think to bring them down here with us? I don't know if I could have convinced them to take this trip." They looked back to the dent in the train car he had made after falling into it from the sky. They couldn't understand why only he made the trip. Only you would jump into a situation this bad by diving out of the sky." Weiss sighed before her eyes widened in panic. "The cars, we have to keep moving up before they detach again. I don't think that'll be necessary, Mishni," Oobleck said as he stepped over and inspected the open hatch Han had broken. "I do believe that was the last car rigged to explode and open up a hole for the Grim to enter through. This train should now be running to Vale without any more explosions. They only set the back few to blow up." Yang questioned. They thought they'd open up every hole they could to let these things in. Unnecessary. I think they've already gotten the results they desired. The teacher drew their attention behind them to the massive horde of Grim on the trail. The teens begrudgingly agreed to the point made before the green-haired huntsman snapped to attention. "Now, I think it is about time we decide how we wish to proceed with our mission." Ruby looked up and saw more White Fang members start to emerge atop the train to fight them. However, some turned and ran the opposite direction towards a group of massive mechanical suits that crested over the train car's tops. She narrowed her eyes and lifted, cresting rose up. Some of us need to stay up here and keep fighting. If they come up here to join the fight, there will be less of them in the train and give us a chance to move through it easier. Blake looked up at the approaching faunus. So some of us stay up here fending off the white fang, and then down at the hatch at their feet, while the others go inside and try to stop the train before it's too late. Miss Rose, Mr. Usumaki, would you care to join me up here holding back the forces? Ruby and Naruto nodded in agreement before Oobleck turned to the others. I trust we can expect this train to stop with you girls' help, right? White's, Blake, and Yang shared a look before nodding to the teacher. The sisters shared a quick hug as Naruto wished Blake and White's luck. They dropped down the hatch and left the remaining trio on top to fend off the White Fang mob. Naruto drew his squall. Do you think we got the easy job, or did we just let them run through an empty train? They were up all night talking about stuff like feelings and emotions and purpose. I don't think they should deal with the mindless, awesome fighting that is about to occur. Ruby followed her point with a dramatic cock of her gun. Yes, Oobleck stood at attention as his thermos slipped into his weaponized form. We can trust those three to stop this train, and the four of us will be up here to thin the numbers. Four? Wolf, why do we count the dog? We don't need to count the dog. Nonsense. Susua has proven himself invaluable on this mission. The Corgi seemed to realize the praise he was given and barked happily. Oobleck gave a nod in return before raising his weapon. Now, stick together. They may have numbers, but we can work as a team. So something loud and thunderous behind them demanded their attention. They looked back once again, marveling at the size of the grim wave following them. Before they noticed what was making its way through, Grim were knocked around and pushed aside, taking snaps and bites at the attacker, only to be obliterated. Their follower braced against the ground before leaping up so fast he managed to land on the back of the rear car. The milk white figure stood up. Cheap shot! Han's voice echoed through the cloak of aura covering him. I'd like to make an amendment. This may be more difficult than we originally anticipated. Hunting. Damn, these guys are desperate. Yang noted as she casually stepped over the unconscious duo she had just made. I'd almost have respected for their guts if they weren't using them to terrorize our city. Weiss frowned as they walked through the train, passing by several crates and cargo boxes of her family's products. If the Schnee flower was any indication, she cringed. It sickens me to think they'd be using my family's stuff to reach their ends. It wasn't bad enough that they were doing to procure this. Her eyes widened and she looked aside to see Blake's guilty expression. I'm sorry, I didn't mean. It's okay. We're past that by this point. Blake quelled her friend's worries as the Harris looked relieved, but still a little angsty about speaking so openly. The bow-wearing girl continued to look around with melancholy in her eyes. It was on a train like this where I made my decision to quit the White Fang for good. It's a little unsettling to be back on one in such a familiar scenario, only with their goal being much worse than just sabotage or sabotaging a corporation's sales. No offense, none taken. But you should be focusing on the fact you're here trying to stop it from spiraling into a catastrophe. That's what I think. Blake showed a small smile at Weiss's encouragement before the Harris offered her one of the magazines for Gramble's shout. The phonist raised an eyebrow in question before the ivory-haired girl smirked. I filled it with dust rounds. I thought you might like to see what they could do with your semblance. Blake shared the smirk and loaded up her weapon. Well, that was just too kind. Hey, are you two done flirting back there? Because we're coming up on the next car. They ran up to join their comrade's side as Yang carefully pushed the door open, prepared to fight back whatever jumped at them next. So what are we going to do when we finally get our hands on Torchwick? Because I'm partial to holding him down while Blake runs her blade over his head and shaves off his. The three girls stared at the sight before them. Don't see that every day. They paused when they saw the large man standing in the middle of the train car, standing between them and the route ahead. He had on a sleeveless vest with his hair shaved away and multiple tattoos over his massive arms. The mask hid his expression, and the large chainsaw-like weapon in his hand completed the intimidating factor. Whoa! Didn't think I'd spot a walking, not really talking movie cliche when we came out here to fight. Jane chuckled. Crazy how things end up, right? Are we done being the jester? You two suck the fun out of life. They stepped up, the three girls armed and ready as they faced the menacing man in front of them. Yang smirked. Can we help you, sir? A snee, a traitor, and a huntress sticking their noses where they don't belong. The man's voice carried a deep and hefty with a bass to it. He hefted up his weapon, holding it up by the handle, while his other hand settled on the grip to share the weight. He retted up and caused the chainsaw to spin. I look forward to the chance of putting each and every one of you down. Well, isn't he ambitious? That's cute. Yang strolled forward, casually stretching her arms as her gauntlets clicked over her forearms. She took a stance and grinned. How about you settle just tussling with me while my friends go on ahead? You sure, Yang? We don't mind sticking around. Now, where's the fun in that? The blonde clenched her fist tighter as she prepared to fight the white-fanged lieutenant. I'll catch up in a second. Suit yourself. Blake and White stepped up to her side, preparing for the chance during the skirmish to slip by. The hairs flicked her ponytail back. But don't go embarrassing us by losing. If you were to do that, then Yang, the blonde barely had time to look back before she noticed the glint. The sword in the hand of a multicolored girl preparing to skewer her neck. The short manacled girl was shattered into pieces when Blake's blade swung in and sliced her apart. She appeared further down the car behind them, and Yang growled, so swerving around and firing a kinetic blast. Neil's parasol unfolded, and she weathered the blast as fire spread around her. The lieutenant took the chance. Their confusion offered to charge and attack. White saw him coming and drew her rapier, using it to block and straining to hold back the attack. The little huntress was nearly blasted off her feet, but slammed into Blake and Yang's back. She quickly composed herself and took her stance to fight. The chainsaw wielding white-fanged lieutenant on one side, and the psychopathic little mix and match munchkin on the other. We may have made light of the situation. Sadly, I'd have to agree. White kept her eyes focused on her foe. Blake, why don't you go ahead and look for Torchwick? What? The black-clad girl rolled back in surprise before looking between Yang and Weiss. The two girls were focused solely on the enemies they faced. Blake shook her head. If we fight them together, we might finish this fight quicker. Yep, and every second we're always fighting Tiny and Mr. Personality over there is a second closer to Veil. We'll hold these guys off. You get up there, stick Torchwick's butt up his own ass, and then stop this train. She still looked hesitant until her partner grinned. Hey, we got this. The three girls dashed out in unison, and Yang charged Neil while Blake and Weiss blindsided the lieutenant. A glyph appeared under Blake's foot that she used to vault, leaping over the furnace's chainsaw as she went swinging for her feet. Weiss took the opportunity to thrust the tip of her rapier into the man's chest as an explosion from Yang's gauntlets sounded behind her. Blake sped through the door. She hated leaving them to fight, but she wouldn't waste the chance they were giving her. She was ending this. Hunting. Ruby ducked and spun under the wire hook punch that sailed over her head. She swung her scythe at blinding speed that Han was forced to block. With each chance she got, he threw his fist at the young hunch's head and released a pressurized burst of steam to disorient her. Ruby barely dodged the attacks and quickly jumped back when he tried to kick her. The wind from his strike rushing over her. Naruto leapt over her head during her retreat to keep the attack on Han going. He swept his Nodachi at the giant man's face, forcing him to lean back on reflex even while his face and body were covered in his aura. When Naruto landed, it was in time to whip around and strike the guard's chest with multiple jabs. Han weathered the attacks and prepared to slam his fist down on Naruto's back, but paused when a sniper bullet impacted his chest. Ruby clicked her teeth in frustration as the massive man easily tanked her sniper rounds, grunting but not falling back from the force. She stopped firing, giving Naruto the chance to bounce back up and re-engage him in a fight. She hated that they couldn't be fighting him side by side and trying to overwhelm this guy's power with the numbers. In all their encounters with him, the key had been to overwhelm him with attacks and skills, forcing him to back or to retreat before he was outdone. But that plan proved problematic for two reasons. One, the fact that this guy was was fending them off and fighting them back much better than he had before. He blocked and parried Naruto's attacks. The blonde's attack at speed considerably faster, but Khan recognized which attacks that he could take and which ones to avoid. They had been able to catch him off guard with Naruto's new ability to stretch and enlarge the aura around his hand, but Khan was quickly adapting to that. Ruby huffed in annoyance as she realized how determined it was to drag this fight out. His merits rested in explosive attacks, power, endurance, and burst of speed, just like Yang, which meant Ruby would utilize her tactic of fast strikes and then make distance from them before repeating if she could, which raised the second problem. There was no room to fight. She and Naruto had to switch out to fighting not because it was their strategy to wear him down, but because there wasn't enough space for them to fight him at once. They were keeping him back on the caboose of the train, but the space of the train car and the size of their opponent left little luxury with how they could fight him off. She'd have loved to spread this fight out over the rest of the train, but Ublik and Swai were currently holding off a veritable swarm of armed terrorists and their giant mech warriors. Naruto had made some horrific observation that dogs that size shouldn't be able to withstand becoming cannibals, but Ruby waved it off. So here they were speeding down an abandoned tunnel on a train filled with terrorists and dust. An army of White Fang soldiers on one end and with a stampede of Grim on the other, with her, Naruto, and the giant glowing Superman in the middle. Did Naruto tempt fate with that silly escalation joke he made at the dance? Now, Ruby yelled, firing her gun off behind her and sending her head with a blur. Naruto rolled back as Ruby leapt up and swung crescent rolls into Han's side, making the large man buckle from the strike to his ribs. He quickly composed himself and prepared to attack, but Ruby fired her gun again, bringing the scythe over his chest and hopefully doing a considerable amount of damage to his aura. She spun using the momentum she still had to circle around and bring her scythe around, only to meet with his gauntlets. How could you think this is alright? You would really set all these scream on innocent people. If it helps to get the message across that the goal is to be taken serious, then of course we would. But you would be attacking people who aren't even involved in this other fondness, the people you are trying to fight for. And when this is all over and everything is for the better, they will be remembered as the foundation that helped us make things better. Ruby grit her teeth, feeling an unfamiliar swell of anger taking her over. As she roared and attacked him, she swung crescent rolls around at speeds so fast it changed into a red and silver blur around her body. Blow after blow landed over Han's frame as the horse found himself unable to retaliate. Ruby pushed on and yelled until Han's hand clamped over her throat and lifted her up without any effort. You talk too much, little girl. He turned around and casually threw Ruby off the back of the train and into the Grim. Ruby! Hunting, a bullet whizzed through the head of her clone. The White Fang surprised by her shadow as she leapt down from above and struck. Blake moved like the wind and knocked everyone in her path out with a swing of her weapons. They yelled, gasped, and screamed in surprise as she made her way through. She needed to hurry. She couldn't waste any more time. The longer she took, the closer the train was to Ville, and the longer her friends were forced to fight. Blake finally reached the door, a train car full of unconscious fondness behind her. She stood tall and ready, taking the moment to calm her breathing while she gripped her katana and cleaver in hand. With a deep breath, she stepped forward and the door slid open. On the other side, she saw the man himself standing on the opposite side of the car. Her eyes furrowed as his still looked amused at her arrival. Well, here there, Kitty. I thought it'd be you that would come all the way up here to see me. Robin noted his tone and voice flighty and joking as Blake remained silent and ready to move. Honestly, it was a tie between whether it'd be seeing you or Red come all the way over. You both have that annoying, self-righteous, suicidal, heroic streak working for you. Now, does it worry you that you're about as naive as that little? Blake dashed forward and crossed her blades in preparation to attack him. Wow, just like that. Dutchway guffed as she yelled and leapt through the air. He aimed the butt of his cane at her as she fell. I thought you'd be a little more careful than that. Blake pulled the trigger and and the shadow she left behind took the blast, but the shadow was made physical with the dust in her gun, turning it into a rock that exploded with his shot landing against it. He found himself pelted by rocks and petals falling over him. Shit, what the? Yeah! He barely had a moment to raise his cane and take the brunt of her attack. He was sent flying back and slammed into the door behind him bodily. He hissed and dropped to his knees with a pained expression as the black-clad girl stood over him. She glared up at her. He glared up at her only to meet her baleful gaze. Your plans end here now. Hunting, whites flashed around her opponent so quickly he failed to even retaliate. Her glaives were suspended in the air and surrounded the bulky fondness from all sides and angles. She used them to jump off, but also to propel herself forward and into the next glyph without losing any speed or momentum. Each time she jumped, she made sure to strike an attack at the lieutenant, overwhelming him in a flurry of white and silver that he could only tank. But no matter how much she hit him, he only stumbled or faltered, not winded or floored by her barrage. They were quick, but the man had a large amount of aura, and those absent muscles apparently weren't just for show. She could have used a more intense, powerful attack to damage him. Except the space and room she was in didn't offer her many options without seriously endangering herself. She slid to a stop a few feet away, and the large man stumbled before catching himself. He lowered his chainsaw and dusted off of his shoulder, scoffing and shaking his head like a feather. On the other side of the car, Yang roared and slammed her fist into the side of the train. Her punch made a dent in the wall and an imprint of her fist in the middle. Her eyes flashed red in anger as she spun on her heel and threw every punch and kick she could. Her attacks struck fast and hard, crushing other pieces of hardware unfortunate enough to get in her way and sending stuff easily hundreds of pounds in weight flying. But her attacks never landed on their targets. Neo joyfully danced around Yang's jabs and strikes, moving and twisting like air around the gauntlet strikes. Each one could have floored her if they landed, and yet she continued to move like she was having a merry walk through the rain. She twirled around Yang's arms and slipped into her guard before slamming her foot up into the blonde's chin. Her head shot back as she growled and roared like a fair animal. The boisterous blonde started to fire shot after shot from her gauntlets as the little criminal easily evaded them. Neo spun and flipped and somersaulted out of the way. This shot that left scorch marks in their way. Yang saw her chance in the short multicolored girl's mocking movements to charge her. She got her hands around the tiny girl's shoulders, only for Neo to slip back out while holding her hand. Neo leapt up, running up the wall, and they stood by and using Yang's hand to steady herself before she jumped off. The shorter girl snapped her legs around the blonde's neck and used momentum and body weight to pull her off of her feet. Neo disentangled herself and threw Yang into the ground with a yelping curse. The short little crook landed daintily on her feet and playfully spun her umbrella. Yang heard another cry of pain beside her as she tried to lift herself up. White was roughly tossed into the ground, and groaned beside her. After being caught by the lieutenant, their opponents stood on opposite ends, reveling in their victory and preparing to land the final blow. Neo drew her blade as the lieutenant revved his chainsaw. His blue eyes met with lavender that quickly shifted to red. The girl launched off the ground. Weiss thrusting at Weiss as Yang charged the white gang member. He reeled back and raised his chainsaw as her punch landed on its side and released a powerful explosion. Weiss barreled through the shorter girl, shattering her to pieces before the hairs landed and twirled around. Her rapier scraped against Neo's blade, and the shorter killer actually found herself on the back foot. Yang's fist pounded and echoed against the chainsaw. The masked man grunted against the force of her punches. He yelled, yanking his weapon down and landing a punch across the blonde's face during one of her swings. But she rolled back and struck him across the face, sending him flying and slamming into the side of the train's interior. She charged and blocked the chainsaw with her gauntlets when he tried to attack. Weiss and Neo's fight was much faster and more elegant than the brawl. The two short girls moved around each other, light on their feet, while their blades crossed in a shower of sparks. Weiss summoned her glaives and tried to catch Neo the agile criminal avoided their path. The Harris launched herself at the girl and slid off the parasol. When she raced it, Weiss landed in a crotch and immediately turned to summon a glyph under Neil's feet. The multicolored girl flipped aside at the last moment. As Yang shuffled back to step into it, the glyph blasted her off of her feet and sent her flying into the air. Neil smirked victoriously as the lieutenant prepared to finish her off. Yang landed on the roof, remaining suspended upside down with another glyph. She chambered her fist as her hair started to move like fire. You lose! Yang was launched into the floor as she punched down, sending an immense shockwave out around her that wrecked the train car's interior. Weiss weathered the force of the attack and shielded her eyes as everything around her was destroyed. In the aftermath, Weiss spotted her teammate crouched on the ground, panting for breath. The lieutenant was on his back and wasn't going to get back up. While Neil had disappeared in the commotion, Weiss hissed as she stood back up and limbered over to Yang's side. Do you need a minute? Can't risk it. Come on, Weiss offered her hand. We have to find Blake. Hunting. Ruby! Naruto's spiked his short blade off the end of the train with a wire wrapped around the hook. The Nodachi circled around the airborne Reaper's hand and stopped her from falling into the middle of the grim horde. She landed on the tracks behind the train and had to take a moment to catch up with its speed. Ruby held onto her scythe as best she could as her other arm was nearly yanked out of its socket by the force of the train. Naruto, hold on! I'll get you up! Hurry! Ruby yelped and jumped to the side to avoid a creep's chomping jaw. They're getting really hungry down here. I'm trying. Give me one. Look out! Naruto looked up and saw Hans raise fist to come down for his head. He kicked her off the ground and slipped between the Faunus's legs as his fist dented the roof, holding tight to Ruby's lifeline. He climbed up to his feet and tried to pull her back in, but Han quickly turned back around and started to attack him while he was distracted. Naruto held the wire tight and started to weave and dodge around Han's heavy punches. The White Fang member chuckled as he watched the Whiskered Fox avoid him like death itself, unable to retaliate and only able to dodge while his friend's life was on the line. Han smirked behind his mask and raised his foot over the wire holding onto Ruby. Naruto's eyes widened and he dove under Han's foot to protect it, using his aura-covered arm to take the brunt of the force, but still gagging as he dented into the car roof. Naruto! Ruby cried out when her friend went missing and felt the harsh tug pull on her wrapped arm. She sliced a barber tusk across the face when he got too close and looked up to see the grim catching up with her. Her eyes frantically looked around for some way out of the bedlam, but struggled to find one. The car that was now the caboose didn't have a bag for her to grab and climb up to help her friend, and there was barely any room to get by on the side of the train. Her eyes widened with a brilliant and terrible idea. Oh! She and Kirsten rose to her side and fired a shot, lifting her off of her feet from the recoil and striking straight into the wall. Her feet planted into the concrete of the tunnel's wall, and she immediately used her speed to keep up with the train. Her footing was unsteady, and she felt like she would slip, but was relieved to be out of the Grimm's range. She saw Naruto on the roof of the caboose as he spotted her with widened eyes. Her eyes immediately went to Han's unprotected back. You lose, boy. You could have been so much more to our people if you just decided to work with us instead of against us. Han slowly stalked forward, focused on Naruto and oblivious of the hunters running up the wall just off to his side. He stood over the crotch student and shook his head. But here you are, whirling pointlessly against the force you don't even begin to face for forfeiting your life in a retaliation that has no hope of succeeding. Do you believe that's a noble cause to throw your life away to? I think you seriously overestimate your own capabilities. Han growled and swung his foot up. Naruto raised his guard at the last moment and was sent flying across the train top. But the sudden flight provided Ruby with the chance she needed. Being yanked down towards the train when the wire was taut and into Han's back, the man yelped when she slashed her scythe across his back and staggered him. He quickly turned to her only to receive the end of the scythe slamming across his cheek and jerking his head aside. head. He roared and blasted a current of steam at the short-hooded girl, but she leapt up into the air and fired around into his chest. Han took it in stride and tried to reach out for her neck before something struck the back of his knee. Han was in a pincer formation with Ruby on one side, Naruto on the other. The young huntsmen and hunters started to attack the larger man, simultaneously striking when he was weak. When Han blocked Ruby's scythe, Naruto attacked with an unlimited fury at his open back. When he swung around and tried to attack Naruto, Ruby shot him and weakened his stance. He tried to attack both students at once, but failed to match their superior counters. Big guy, I think you're wrong. Naruto wheeled around Han's punches with a grin on his face. I don't think our efforts are pointless. I don't think I'm throwing my life away. I'm fighting because all I need to be to people as misguided and wrong as you is proof that there's a better way. And in case it wasn't obvious, Naruto fired a dust arrow into his hand that took up the property of wind. Won't! Ruby fired underneath her, propelling herself up and over Han's head. She landed behind Naruto and pressed her back into his before preparing her next shot. Lose! Crescent Rose fired, sending both of them flying off to their feet, and Naruto reeled back and landed his punch into the larger man's chest before he could react. The White Fang member was blown off of his feet from the gale force wind and sent flying back over the grim. They saw him slam into the roof of the tunnel and spike into the horde beneath. Naruto and Ruby panted for air and tried to collect themselves after their fight. They looked at each other and stared in silence before raising their fists together. We kick butt. Duh. Ruby took a deep breath and looked back at the length of the train. She saw the army of machines against Oobleck and Zwei had thinned, but the train was still not slowing down. She looked at the whiskered friend, and she looked at her whiskered friend. I need to help my team. Then you're going to need to get through the White Fang. Naruto lifted himself up and cracked his knuckles. Wait until you get your chance and run ahead. Let's kick even more butt then. Duh. Hunting. The door broke open and Roman groaned as he slammed to the ground. The White Fang members manning the control immediately turned around and panicked when they saw the state he was in. He growled, "Don't just stand there like frozen deer. You grab her." Several subsequent shots fired off in a second and knocked the weapons off of their hands. Blake strode over with her pistol in hand and glared at each one of them to make a move. There were several of them to one of her, and she was completely outnumbered. Fortunately, they realized they were outclassed and stood back. "Oh, you worthless flea-ridden!" Toshri gasped as he was lifted up by his collar and dragged over to the control station. He found himself pressed close into the buttons with barely any room to breathe as he looked up at his tormentor. And kind of got a mean streak, don't you, kitten? The brakes, point to them. And Blake stated flatly, "Unfortunately, I am not the conductor for this little choo-choo train. Just an innocent rider that you felt the need to torment. How could She raised his head and slammed it down harshly. "Shit, you done playing nice now? I'm giving you a chance to stop this before it gets any worse." Blake whispered, "Stop this now, and you won't be one of the worst terrorists in the history. You'll just be tried for attempted acts of terrorists instead. Well, you sure are silver-tongued, aren't you, kitty cat? But guess what?" Roman said in a mocking tone. "We busted the controls. There aren't any brakes on this ride. You're lying. I'm really not. I don't believe you." Blake raised his head and looked into his old soul. Her amber eyes narrowed darkly with contempt for the man in her grasp. "I refuse to believe a man like you would willingly throw yourself into something like this without a way out. What? I don't strike you as the guy who sacrificed himself for the cause. No, because you're a coward, and you'd make any way out of a situation you could, if it meant you got to live. Speaking from experience, Blake." The boy and Faunus looked back to see Weiss and Yang run into the room. They looked tired and a little worn out, but she was relieved to see they were still okay. Blake turned back to look at the man in her grasp as he smirked knowingly at her. She slammed his head into the corner and dropped him unconscious. As her team looked at her in confusion, her heart dropped as she shook her head. "They broke the brakes. We can't stop the train." Hunting. Dr. Oobleck and Zwei were holding off the last dredges of the White Fang. What once was a sprawling sight of grim mask, weaponry, and grey cloth was now beaten and knocked unconscious on the rooftop. So they had given Ruby the chance she needed to slip past their foes and run up to the front car to check on her team. The whiskered blonde rested on his knees and caught his breath before he looked up. He stared ahead and rubbed his eyes before pointing forward. "Professor, Doctor, seriously now, Naruto retorted before shaking his head. I think I see something up ahead. You do? Ubli fixed his glasses and squinted his eyes, but failed to see much farther ahead of the train. I suppose your enhanced eyesight would allow you to see in this situation better than I. Yes, naturally, my vision is truly a remarkable evolutionary wonder. We're coming up to the end of the tunnel. Beg pardon, the tunnel. Naruto yelled, it's ending. We're gonna crash. Ubli looked up and slowly shook his head as Why whimpered at their feet. Unfortunate, but we can't lose hope just yet. There's still a fight to be had on the surface, so when we reach it, Naruto raised his hand as the teacher nodded. Can we survive a train crash while we're standing on top of it? Excellent point. The green-haired teacher nodded before looking down at the hatch by his feet. He pulled it open and started climbing down. Mr. Uzumaki, I do believe we should be preparing for impact inside the confines of the train car. Do you seriously think it's a good idea getting down there with loose crates and metal during a high-speed crash? The only other option is getting off the train entirely, Oblique stated, the roars and howls of Grim behind them emphasizing his point. Would you like to do the honors? The fox shook his head, then hurried down there and grabbed Little Swai when you do. Actually, I think I could survive the Grim. Now! Naruto growled and looked down at the corgi at his feet. The little puppy sat down and seemed to offer himself up to be raised. Naruto rolled his eyes and picked the dog up with a scowl. Just so we're clear, I'm not doing this because you're cute. It devastated Ruby and Yang if you got hurt. Rough. Naruto climbed down and got into a small nook in the corner of the room besides Oblique. The train's wheels crushed and the horrible sound of the car ahead of them impacting and crashing reaching their ears. Swai licked his chin. Don't push it. The impact hit them and it all went black. End of chapter 71.